Hello, my name is Bilal Kohgadai. I'm an independent security researcher, and today we're going to go through some SQL injection techniques. On the screen here you can see HackerOne CTF page. These are just some exercises if you're looking to challenge yourself. It's great because when you do these and you capture the flag, you score points, and those points will earn you invitations, sweet invitations to private bug bounty programs. So, you know, there's more than one reason to do these, but these are really fun. The reason why I'm going to go through one of these is I'm trying to highlight and explain a specific type of SQL injection attack called double query injection. And we're going to focus on this micro CMS version 2. Okay, so if you hear some background music, that's my neighbor. They're playing something very bass heavy, so that's probably going to be in the background throughout this whole cast, and just consider that background music because there's not a lot I can do about that. Alright, so let's get started with micro CMS version 2. Let's hit go. Let's see, there's some links here. Changelog, nothing all that interesting. Markdown test. Same thing, create a new page. Oh, here we have a login page. That's interesting. So let's inspect this. We can see there's it's sending a post request. There's two inputs. One is username, the other one is password. And let's just test some default credentials, admin, login, unknown user. Okay, so they're giving us that error. So to give us a better idea of how basic SQL injection works, we're going to create a fictional backend for this form. And let's open up SQL Fiddle. You can see I've already kind of described a table. It's called admins. It's got two fields we care about. That's username and password. It's got these two rows that we've inserted in there just for example. And you can see kind of what the database looks like when I run this SQL query. It's got two rows. So let's kind of assume we know what happens when you hit login in the form, right? It probably has a statement something like this. So like the rows from admin, where username equals our variable u and password equals our variable p, right? And considering we put admin, we can kind of test that and see why it didn't work. We know that there is no credentials admin in that database, so it returns nothing, right? Seeing as we do know what we inserted here, so let's try admin and 1, 2, 3, 4. We know that'll work. And there we get that result. So let's demonstrate some injection and how that would look on our backend. So again, this is our variable u and our variable p. That's representing whatever we put in this input. So anything between those quotation marks we can mess with, right? And same with this. So let's test that out. So we know this user doesn't exist. We know Bilal does not exist in this database. We know this password wouldn't work, xxxx. But that's something we can input. We can also input a little bit more, right? Let's assume they're not checking for bad characters, and we can put a quotation mark that really screws things up. We can add an or statement, or 1 equals 1, terminate the rest of this with this little comment, double dash. So basically what that's describing is a select query where it's looking for this username, or 1 equals 1, which is a true statement. So it doesn't matter that this part is untrue. So if we run that, let's see what we get. It dumps the whole database. That's fantastic. So this is essentially what we'll be inputting into the password input. So let's give that a shot and see what happens. Right? So Bilal, put a password, and copy and paste that in, just for the sake of readability. We'll change this to text, and let's see what happens. Oh, it doesn't work. Unknown user. What? You know, did I explain all that for no reason? No. That's going to be an important instruction, and but we know that's not how this thing works. So I remember when I was first going through this, I tried some, standard SQL injection payloads and didn't have a whole lot of results. And then I remember just putting a simple quotation. And let's see what happens when we do that. We hit login, and wow, okay, we got something entirely different. Not expecting this. Clearly there's been an error raised. We see a trace back. Looks like this is in Python, and this is really interesting. This is kind of the key to figuring out where to go next. We see what their select statement looks like, right? Alright, so let's put that in here. Let's look at SQL Fiddle. Take this out. Alright, so it's a little different than what I had assumed earlier, right? They're only selecting the password field, and they're just from whatever username we put. What's likely happening is the logic in the back end and the Python script is likely doing the comparison between this password that they received from the MySQL database and whatever we inputted. So it's a little bit of a different statement. Okay, but it's a statement that we can try to find a way to inject some of our own SQL code in, right? So let's get rid of this. And what happens if we change the input? Again, I'm going to terminate with the string, so there's really essentially nothing. And then we're going to use another OR statement. And OR 0 equals 1, and we're doing a union select of 1, 2, 3, 4. So just to explain a little bit of this, we have an OR statement and 0 equals 1. So this kind of negates the first select statement entirely, and instead it returns like this union select statement. That's all it's doing is selecting 1, 2, 3, 4, which if we were just to run this, it's always gonna just select whatever we put. It's just select whatever that string was. So we go back, and let's try to give this a shot and see what happens. Same thing. So the password field now is actually 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, this is essentially our input. Everything I'm highlighting right here is what would be in that username input. Okay. So let's see what happens when we send that to the login form. I like this page. Let's keep it. Let's just open another page. So this is our payload. Let's put it into the username. And for the sake of readability, let's make this a little bit wider. You can see that whole statement. And so we know when the backend is getting this, it's going to return a password of 1, 2, 3, 4, I think. So let's tell them that our password is 1, 2, 3, 4. So as long as, let's change this. As long as this matches whatever we told the MySQL database to return, we should get in. So let's give that a shot. And that worked. We're logged in. Fantastic. Let's go home. Oh, there's a new link that wasn't there before, a private page. Oh, and here's our first flag. So great. We can go and put this into the CTF, and we will earn a point. And if you go to the CTF, there's hints too, and so it'll give you some hints to the next flag. I've already done that stuff, I kind of know what the next flag is. We're going to actually skip flag 2. We're actually going to go to flag 3 because that's basically why I decided this was an interesting video, because flag 3 is going to require us to do something really interesting. Let's actually go back to that hints page. Alright, so found flag 0. We're going to skip flag 2 and flag 1, and flag 2 is what we're interested in. Credentials are secret, flags are secret, coincidence. So what this is telling me is I'm going to find this flag by finding those credentials. So it looks like let's log out. Let's go back to this. It looks like we need to find, instead of just bypassing this form, we need to find the actual credentials to the user that normally logs in here, right? Okay. So how do we dump, the credentials we're looking for? We know the login form, it simply checks for passwords, but none of that data gets exposed to the browser. We saw earlier in this error, how this query itself was divulged to us. So right, how are we going to get those credentials? I don't know if you guys can hear, but my neighbor is playing Fleetwood Mac, and that's fine SQL injection music. Alright, so I know that MySQL has a problem, a specific problem with the group by keyword. The problem is that the group by keyword in SQL expects each result to have a unique field, and when it doesn't, it freaks out, it raises an error, and it'll dump some information for us, whatever the field name is. So that does not make a whole lot of sense if you don't know that, and so we're gonna kind of demonstrate just the basics of the group by field a little bit, and we'll go into how we can leverage that to okay, text here. How we can leverage that to dump those credentials we're looking for. Okay, so let's just so again, like, this is our table. This is our select statement. You can see what's in there right now. Let's add some more data. We're just going to insert a few more rows into our database. Run that again. You can see all that. And so just to give you an idea of what group by does, so we're going to have this group by statement, group by password, right? So what this will do is, we can see there's a few duplicate passwords here, and group by will group them. We can see, so we, instead of 4 rows, we have 3. Admin 1 2 3 4, Charlie ABC, Charlie 3 DEF, excuse me, and you can see there's no Charlie 2. Charlie 2 right here has been grouped with just good old Charlie because they have the same password, because we grouped by password, right? Okay, so now that we understand how that works, we can understand how to make it not work, right? So yeah, again, MySQL has a group by problem. When there's a duplicate key, it freaks out. Just imagine if somehow there was another Charlie 3, right? That was another row that wasn't grouped together, right? Like, we can add Charlie 3 again, and what'll happen is it'll still have only 3 results because they group these 2 together. But if somehow the database server returned results with the 4th Charlie 3, it'd freak out because it's technically supposed to be grouped together. Okay, let's generate some random results. This is just for the sake of demonstrating how this can be a problem. So select floor and So all this really does is it just generates a random 0 or 1 for each one of our, what have we got, 5 rows here now. So you have 0, you have 1, and so when the group by is looking at this, it starts with 0, that's fine. It starts with 1, that's fine. And when we have the third result that duplicates one of these twos, we'll run into problems. So let's change this. Let's add group by. So we're going to, this random number is going to be aliases C, and we're going to do an aggregate function count, and we're going to finally finish with the group by C. So we're going to select two fields. There's our random number field is C, that's going to be our second field, and the first one's going to be count, and we're grouping by count. Let's see what happens. Okay, duplicate entry. Duplicate entry number 1 for key group key. So that's what's happening, is it had those values, it found a duplicate one in that third row or whatever row it was, and it freaked out, and it dumped the value of that second field, which is 1, which you know, that's our pay dirt. We got our error. It doesn't seem like much, it's just leaking out this 1, but it's technically leaking out the value of that field instead of the field name or something like inconsequential. So like, what happens if we change this a little bit? If instead of just a random number, we have it divulge a little bit more. So this is a statement we're going to look at. So I'm just going to copy and paste. We use the concatenate function, and here's some interesting. It's a database. So we're going to concatenate the value of this database function, and this is just hex for space. So we create one string that's the database with a space and that random number, and let's see what happens. Trying to get an error. There's our error. So yeah, there we go. Duplicate entry. This is our database name. You could also change database to username. Get our username. This is all SQL fiddle kind of stuff. But yeah, that's valuable information. So, but how are we going to leak the credentials? It's same idea. Instead of this username, we're going to have an SQL subquery. So we're going to select username from admins. I'm going to just limit this to our first indexed row and just one row. Let's see what happens. Okay, there, we've initiated that error, and we've got Charlie 1. So we know that we've just gotten that data leak, Charlie. We can even get other data. We can go down a row. We're trying to hit that error. There we go. We get an admin. So I hope that is a little bit more demonstrative of how a group by double query injection works. Now let's go back to the query we started from, the one we got in the error. Let's there we go. Okay, so this is essentially it. And let's see if we can add or injected SQL and what that would look like. It would look like something like this, right? Now that's a lot of SQL code, and let's break this down. We have what we started with. Here's the OR operator right here, and then this right here, everything I'm highlighting here, this is our derived table. This is where the magic happens. This is where the group by statement is. This is where that concatenated string with the random number is, and this part right here is just selecting one. It's kind of inconsequential because we're going to error out, And one thing I added was this new table. So we're not going to mess with the admins table. We're adding this information underscore schema tables. This is a metadata table that MySQL has. And the reason why we're using it is because it has a lot of rows, and that ensures that we will hit that duplicate entry. So this right here, what I'm highlighting is essentially what's going to go into our form, into that username input. So let's give that a shot. Okay, this is our form. We're going to put that in. Let's just, for the sake of readability, increase the size to 300, and so maybe that's a little too big, 200. There we go. So yeah, username, our super long SQL string, and let's give it a go. Okay, so we have an error, and here's the goodness right here. So it looks like we were able to leak this right here, which is that user. So Evelina, we added a space and a 1, but it's Evelina is our username. Now let's copy and paste that. Let's go back. Let's increase the size, and now we can change username to password. Let's give this a shot. Aha. And now, same thing, it's a duplicate arrow key, and it's dumping the password, which is Nokia. So now, we got our password, Evelina, Nokia, we're putting in for our password, and let's hit login, and there we go. We have our final flag. So there we are. We got our flags, we dumped our credentials, we went through explaining double query injection. I hope I did a decent job. I know for me, it took me a little bit to get my head wrapped around the whole thing, and I hope that was useful. For programmers out there, if you want to prevent this, never trust user input. Always look to sanitize, any dynamic SQL statements, and you can avoid something like this. So again, my name is Bilal. I hope that was useful, and have a good one.